Welcome to My Money Mindset podcast, where we explore how a healthy mindset is the foundation for financial success. Each week, we delve into mindset hacks and practical strategies to help you enhance your income, help you make more appropriate investments for yourself, and to improve your overall financial well-being. Join us on this journey to transform your financial future by transforming your mindset. Please note that the information provided on this podcast is for general information purposes only and does not constitute as personal, financial or health advice. It has been prepared without considering your individual objectives, financial situation or life needs. Before making any financial or health decisions, you should consult with a qualified professional or financial advisor to ensure the information aligns with your specific circumstances. So let's begin and enjoy this journey as each episode teaches us on how to improve our overall mindset that overall improves our financial success. Hello everyone, and this episode I'm going to have a few little different scenarios, real life scenarios of what's been happening. I do have a particular client to start off this episode that by the name of Tom. Tom approached me wanting to sort of buy his own property as an investment property originally, but now has met a partner, fallen in love, and they want to actually buy something together. So what had actually happened is Tom got a pre-approval just on his own, and was basically looking. Took him about 6 to 8 months before he could actually look at something that was worthwhile, what he would consider was worthwhile. But then found a partner and then basically turned up and said, well, look, Mark, are you able to do a pre-approval for both myself and my partner? His pre-approval had to be rejigged in order to cater for his partner. So basically what happened then was the serviceability went from roughly around $400,000 loan, being able to afford a $400,000 loan for Tom just on his own, to actually up to around the $780,000 for a loan. Now, what had actually happened though is that Tom basically said, well, if that's the case and we're able to borrow up to 780, we will need to buy a house that was somewhere in the vicinity of 900,000, but did not have the deposit. Enough deposit to suffice the 20%. So basically what we had to do was manage and get Tom and his partner a loan or pre-approval in the 90% LVR, so loan to value ratio at about 90% the loan was of the 900,000, and then adjust that pre-approval in accommodation for the new purchase price. Now, what happened here was, unfortunately, Tom and his partner, around 2 years after, decided that they would go separate ways, and the loan had not really been paid off in a great abundance to what they expected. So as in all separations, basically everything was split into half. They were amicable in saying, look, 50-50, they put equal amounts of deposit in, and what are we able to then afford using the deposits? So quickly, this is a pretty straightforward separation. So basically what would happen is they sold their home, they collected, paid out the debt obviously of the first mortgage of the bank, and then any remaining funds, the surplus went over. The actual house did go up, so they made a bit of money there. I think it went up to about, they purchased for 900 and they sold for about 980. After agent fees, I think there was a capital gain. It was in Victoria, so there was no capital gains tax there, but they did make a gain of roughly about, I think it was about 65,000, and they split that in half. Obviously, any other proceeds or funds left over was in 50%, and they both walked away accordingly. They were quite happy with that. They basically both turned up and said, well, Mark, are you able to get your team to sort of find and get us pre-approved as singles now? And then what they basically ended up doing, funnily enough, is sort of moving into, they're purchasing two properties. Interesting, yeah? So two properties with separate deposits, separate applications, separate names on titles. But Tom's partner was subleasing a room off Tom and renting her property out and using that as an investment and paying Tom rent money. So in actual fact, what the guys decided to do was sort of go their own way, but they were happy to live together and rent off each other basically, and Tom's partner was able to rent out her investment property. It worked out better for them simply because they then turned out and said they didn't have a lot of pressure in life, as in living expenses, and that was their solution towards this ever-growing problem of affordability, as they found that obviously moving out and having to rent and so on and so forth and save money, this was a better strategy. Now, they are no longer together as in partners, I don't think, anyway. But that being said, the strategy meaning that both of them now have two separate properties, quite happy to spend time together as in friends or what have you, and rent off each other, or basically rent out one and then collect the money and so on and so forth, right? So however that is looked on down the line. Now the advantages to this is they basically both purchased properties that were under the $450,000 mark. Now there is a little thing going around as in properties to buy that are in affordability, simply that the price range of a property $450,000 to $480,000 in a purchase price is somewhat, anything less of that, 480 or less, is the best way to go about in life at the moment, especially for younger people trying to get into the property market, simply because the cost of something at 450 to 480 or less is actually equal to that or less than the rent that you would achieve if it was an investment property. So basically what they're saying, that if you are able to rent this property out, let's say you purchase something for 480 odd thousand, the loan on that would be somewhere circa around the 30 odd thousand, and they're saying you could basically rent it. Now, I think it's going to be quite a very hard thing to do, simply because any property that is around 500,000 or 480, thousand, is, especially after add the interest add backs or any other costs. So interest roughly about 23 after you paid roughly about 96,000 deposit of 20%. I'm just saying as an example, 23,000. You definitely want to make sure that your rent is really close or over that. I mean, it can be less, obviously, your negative gearing, right? But what they're basically, a lot of the information going around at the moment that I see on social media feed is that that's probably the balancing point, 480,000 or less to purchase and then invest it out type of thing, rent it out, as an investment, and then the returns are not going to be it's not going to stretch you out. What you've got to consider here is, obviously, if you're renting this property, then you've got to be living somewhere else. So if you're living with mum and dad or someone else, and you're minimising the rent costs, so if you basically rent out a 2-bedroom property and you sublease, or you're renting it with a partner, or and they're able to cover half the amount of rent that it costs you, then it may be a tactic moving forward. And moving back to Tom's scenario here, is basically what they did is they separated they made the costs 50% each, obviously. Tom's partner was receiving 100% of the rent, but the costs of living was somewhat halved for her because she was subleasing a room. So in a way, anything less than 480, let's say you picked up something for 400,000, you could do the sums on that as well. It's not a bad tactic. Is it something that an investor should be doing, or just to get their foot in the property market? If it works for you, I think it should. If it means that it stops you from spending your money elsewhere, as in not saving deposit, and you buy this property in the event and hope that it goes up in capital gain. If it doesn't, and you're positive geared and it's paying itself off, another strategy. It's a slow burn, but it's definitely a burn that it gets you in the property game, enables you into years to come to be able to use it as equity to buy another one, or to sell it somewhere down the track and then buy another property that was probably a more perfect property, that sort of stuff. I think this strategy is quite unique, but it's very powerful to hit the ground running in property. Those of you who find it very difficult to save because of the cost of living, it can be somewhat a game changer, because it gets you that property that you sort of want to get into the game, and it enables you, or stops you, it inhibits you from spending your money elsewhere besides a deposit. So great little story, that one. I've also got another story here in relation to placing a little granny flat, or a little 2-bedroom, I think now what they call pod houses, onto land. There's different terminology. Basically what it is, it's a little pod. It can be on a trailer to try and avoid council regulations and stuff like that. it may be just like normal. I mean, obviously you've got to go through planning and councils and stuff like that, but what people do is they put these little container homes on there, pod homes as they call them, or container homes. Could be 1 bedroom, could be a studio, could be 2 bedrooms. I've seen some real funky looking designs, 3 bedrooms, blah, blah, blah. The cost does start to escalate up, but they basically say it's quite a simplistic way of living. So if you put yourself in a studio pod home or a 1 to 2 bedroom home, put it on some vacant land. Vacant land is cheaper than buying a house. So the strategy here is to sort of have buy the land at a cheaper price, somewhere around the 300 to 400,000. Buy these kit homes or pod homes for roughly, I think I've seen them go for 60,000 all the way up to astronomical 180,000. But let's say you're going to get scrape the bottom of the barrel and buy this pod home or kit home for 60, 70 odd thousand. By the time it's all powered up and sewage connected and all that, let's say the cost of buying the land is 300 plus 80 odd thousand, 380 under 400,000. Are we able to get finance for that? Yes. Basically, why I'm having this episode is simply because I did have a client who she's actually done this, and we did finance her. We financed her on the home. Emily, she did really well here. She basically saved enough to purchase the land and utilised one of the guys in the local township where she was, that he was able to park his truck. So what she actually did is she collected a little bit of rent, was able to add, get all the add backs with being able to have an investment property, because simply she was earning income from it. So it was an investment property that was earning income. It wasn't a great deal of rent. I think it was circa around $8,000 per annum that she was collecting from one of the local tradespersons that was parking their truck there, and a few other pieces of equipment. But it enabled her to sort of factor in any tax advantages and add backs. Then what she did is she basically also gave her time to go to the council, find out exactly about what premises that she could put on there, affordability wise and stuff. We actually financed the land, as in did a loan for her, and then while she was doing all planning and preparation for the kit home to be put on there, and she also did pressure test placing other homes. She just said the kit home would be better for now. What she was able to do, and it was a great idea that we came up for her, was to put the kit home, rent out the kit home, enabled the tradesperson to continue parking their trailer and stuff. I think it was a truck and trailer on there. What ended up happening was the tradesperson who was renting the land just to park the truck and the trailer ended up moving into the kit home. So it was a bit of a double whammy, win-win situation. The council had stamped off the kit home. Everything was done accordingly. It was legal. Now she's come to the point where she said, look, it's gone up in value in the area. The actual land value did increase by roughly, I think it was about 30 odd thousand or thereabouts. So it was a great advantage. Going back to buying something under 400,000, this was fantastic, because she was basically able to rent out the kit home for 200, I think it was. So she was collecting around the $16,000 to $17,000 per annum via the truck, trailer and pod kit home. The tradesman was very happy because obviously it's cheap accommodation. He was very happy and amicable to keep the place in tip-top condition and look after the land for her. So she's now, what we've done is we've able to sort of squeeze out a bit more equity for her. We've come up with a few different solutions as in financing and strategies moving forward. It did take us about 6 months in order to strategize and create a goal plan for her. It's all moving ahead accordingly. She's actually moving into another property that she recently purchased. So it was a win-win situation. Mind you, she did purchase nowhere near her land, and she's utilising that land as a gearing way of making sure that she can buy and afford her other place. So she's basically collecting $18,000 per annum just from renting the land out, and then obviously working full-time, but cash flow is increased drastically because of this kit home. So these kit homes can be, if they're used wisely, are really good. Sometimes I have heard that some people overpay for these kit homes simply because it's a fad. Just once again, make sure that it fits in accommodation to your budget. Make sure you can afford this. Make sure that you everything ticks the boxes in your council, regulation-wise, legal, all the legal stuff is ticked off. Make sure you run it past your accountant and all that type of stuff. And your broker can get pretty inventive with this sort of thing. There are banks that don't accept kit homes, so be aware that there are, it may not be the cheapest interest rate, but sometimes it can be very competitive. So don't always think that you sort of, just got to accept anything because you're taking a cheap way. The best way, what we did do with Emily here, was really make sure that in her goal and her plan towards achieving her goal is in the first investment property to buying the land, putting the kid home, and then buying another property for herself to live in eventually. That was all placed in accordance to her finance, and we actually pressure tested it and did a worst case scenario. So we made it that her goals of buying her own place was around 5 years. She actually reached that goal in about 2.5 years, so it was pretty good. The only reason we did that and we were able to get 2.5 years as opposed to 5 years before she moved in her own house and had an investment property was simply because she actually worked very hard and saved a lot of her money. She did make a few sacrifices as in going out and stuff like that, but all in all, she's done very well, and great success stories. I hope that you enjoyed that and you can relate to it, or please share it with someone that you believe may benefit from the information or these two little stories, as in kit homes or anything as in investment properties and gearing and stuff like that. It can get a little bit dicey when you're trying to, scrape the bottom of the barrel, but don't forget, it's always the case. You've got to start somewhere, and don't feel as though simply because you're buying at a lower price or anything that you should be disregarded or not as looked after as someone that's buying $1 million, $2 million property. It's all relative. It's all relative to what you're doing. Make sure that you keep focus on your goals and make sure that everything is in accordance to your budget. Don't fear as though you're unable or can't do it simply because of policies or banks and stuff like that. Always be open and transparent when speaking and discussing and pressure testing your scenarios, because eventually that goal or that strategy and that game plan is actually going to come to fruition. And like I said, just like Emily, 5 years down to 2.5 years before she reached the ultimate goal. I mean, that's bloody awesome. So please share it with anyone, and see you on the next episode, guys. See ya.